And we really appreciate you. We appreciate you so much for joining us week after week here at NIAPRS for all of our webinars. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to leave the introductions for our Supreme Leader, Harvey Rosenthal, in a couple of minutes. But first, I want to give you all just general housekeeping, just like I typically do. And so you might notice as you all came into the room that you're muted, and that's by design, and we're just trying to reduce the overall noise so that you can actually hear the presenters. You'll also notice that you're not on video, and that is also by design. Now, in Zoom, you may have the ability to actually unmute yourself and put yourself on video on the screen. And we ask you not to put yourself on screen, but throughout the presentation, our presenters today will be asking you questions, and you can respond to them either using the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and you can actually speak your question to them. At the end, we will have a question and answer period. And so there will be that. And again, the opportunity for you to speak it and or just use the chat box. Before I go on, I want to just let you know about next week's webinar. And that is going to be on Tuesday, June 16th at noon. And that's called Empowerment in Crisis, supporting people to reclaim their voice and in making their choice. And that's an ensemble with the collective staff and a special guest. So please join me in welcoming all the presenters, and specifically Harvey Rosenthal, who will introduce the next section.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I just want to thank and welcome you for joining us today. We have a wonderful presentation. You know, so many of us know about RAP and have used RAP, but this is a very specialized version that we're so grateful that our presenters have created and will be sharing today. We will have both a recorded version of this presentation and the PowerPoint on our homepage, niaprs.org. But I think you'll also be able to get a link to the document, and they'll talk about that, I'm sure. You'll also see on the homepage a daily meditation link from Ruth. These are really fabulous. I did 2 of them yesterday, or I did the one from yesterday twice and the one from today twice. They were so good. So I really encourage you. She puts a lot of herself in them, and there's a lot to get from that. I want to also just really give it up to people who have really been experiencing all this trauma, all this separation, maybe some benefits and blessings from what's happened and what we're dealing with. But certainly it's been hard for a lot of people. We were just talking about how we miss the contact with everybody, and I miss you, and we see a lot of you over the course of the year. But this is the next best thing, and so we just want to be there for you about that. And anybody who's lost someone because of the COVID, please know that we're there with you with full heart. You're part of our community. So this presentation is, again, really exciting. I noticed that it was being sent around as an email about a month ago, and it was immediately the right thing to see if these folks could do it, and I'm so glad that they can, and they'll be doing it today. The 2 presenters, I'll give you a brief bio. So we have Kristen King, who's the Virtual Solutions Manager and RAP Project Manager at Advocates for Human Potential. She's been a certified RAP facilitator since 2011, and she uses her passion for wellness and 15 years of digital and print publishing experience as senior advisor to AHP's RAP and Recovery Books division. Matthew Federici is the executive director of the Copeland Center for Wellness and Recovery. Matthew came to the Copeland Center in 2010 from the Institute for Recovery and Community Integration, where he served as program director to create systems transformation for implementation of the Certified Peer Specialist Training Program across Pennsylvania. I'm out of breath from explaining that to you. So important. Matthew is an internationally recognized speaker, trainer, and consultant on recovery, wellness, community inclusion, and peer support. He's on the board of directors for the International Association of Peer Support and the National Coalition for Mental Health Recovery. His personal and professional journey in wellness and recovery is personal, as involvement as a family member and a person in recovery for a consumer advocate for over 20 years, and I have known Matthew for quite a while, and we run into each other at the airport or a conference periodically. But it was good to see you today, Matthew. And Kristen, thank you so much. This is really, again, really a gift. This is one of the first times this is being rolled out. So you're getting the benefit of something that's pretty brand new to something that's old, tried, and true and tested. So I'll just say that I could say more, but I won't. I'll just tell you that you can access this online, both the guidebook that they're going to be talking to you about, but then the recorded webinar and the PowerPoints. So I'm going to turn it over to Kristen.
Awesome. Thanks, Harvey. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be here with you. I see a lot of familiar names on the attendee list. So excited about that. And I'm so excited to be able to share the screen with my friend Matthew today. So before we get started, we want to hear from you. What are you all hoping to get out of today's webinar? Go ahead and type in the chat box and let us know what you would like to get out of the webinar today. And Harvey and team, you all feel free to type in the chat. You can also speak up. Matthew, what are you hoping to get today?
I'm muting here. Hey, Kristen, how you doing? I'm just looking forward to connecting with you as a co-facilitator in this new exciting stuff that we're doing here with this guide. Yeah, I'm also hoping to really just connect with others and send the message about the importance of connection. I think it's like the cornerstone of all of our whole health and well-being. So that's what I'm hoping for. Thanks, Kristen. How about you?
I'm just really excited to connect with the community. I work full-time from home anyway, so I'm feeling extra lonely the last couple of months. So I'm really excited to just connect with people who are seeking connection and to just learn from you all as well as sharing some information. And I see lots of people are answering in the chat. You know, folks are talking about wanting to support both themselves and others who they know who are really isolated right now. And I'm seeing a lot of really warm and outward thinking comments here about understanding others and being a support to others. And I hope that we're going to find those things and also find some ways to support ourselves. So thank you all for sharing that. Please feel free to continue sharing those thoughts as we get into our slides. And I just want to acknowledge you're seeing the cameras and the slides together, but my camera is right here and my slides are right there. So if you notice me looking to the side a little bit, don't be alarmed. I'm still with you, but I'm just checking to make sure that I'm seeing what you're seeing. So let me move on to the next slide. Thanks everyone for your comments. So, you know, we're talking a lot about loneliness and isolation right now because there's a lot going on, but these are not new issues. And they're definitely something that we need to address. There was a survey by Cigna in 2018, and we'll give you the link to that if you're interested, that talked to 20,000 American adults about what their experience was with loneliness, isolation, and connection with others. And what they found was that almost half of all adults living in the US always feel alone or always feel left out. And 43% feel isolated from other people. Only about half, 53%, are having meaningful interactions every day. And for those people who are living with others, they're a little bit less lonely than people who are living alone. But those who live with others had a loneliness score of 43.5, and those who live by themselves had a loneliness score of 46.4. And the loneliest of all were single parents who are living with their kids, but they're not having a different type of connection with other adults. So loneliness is a big ongoing issue, right? So it's something we want to pay attention to. But then we throw in a pandemic. And now for months on end, many of us are unable to leave our homes. And so we're having fewer casual social interactions like with neighbors or at the grocery store, just on the sidewalk. We're also having fewer intentional interactions. I don't know about you, but one of the things that I have really missed during this time of physical distancing is the fitness classes that I used to go to. I used to teach Zumba group fitness classes face-to-face with anywhere from like 5 to 20 other people twice a week. And that was like my lifeline. And obviously we haven't been gathering in large groups for quite a while. And so I'm really missing that. We're also seeing that lots of people are feeling fearful or uncertain or worried about contact with others. They're not sure how close they're supposed to stand. They're not sure what they're supposed to do or what they're allowed to do. They may not know what's safe for them or what's safe for other people, so they're reluctant to have those physical connections. A lot of us have been home from work or have been laid off from work, and so we're really experiencing a loss of that connection. And those of us who do live alone may have been physically alone for months. So there's a lot of isolation that's happening for people right now, even above and beyond what we were previously experiencing. So we have another question for you in the chat. What are you discovering about your own wellness during the physical distancing that we've all been participating in the last couple of months? Go ahead and type in the chat and tell us what you're noticing for yourself. How has your wellness been affected? And while you do that, I'm gonna just scroll through and see some of the earlier comments you've made. Yeah, lots about learning how to reconnect with others as things are shifting. I see a couple of questions in here about the survey. When you get the slides, there's actually a link to the report on the survey, so you can get some more information about that. Yeah, Monica's sharing that it's harder to be well, to maintain wellness in isolation. I'm absolutely seeing that for myself. Matthew, what about you?
I think the biggest thing that I've discovered about my wellness during this whole thing is that, well, one, I'm thankful again that I'm thankful that I have the framework and structure of WRAP, because it reminds me that I have to, reassess my wellness tools, because the ones I normally have been using aren't available. So I have to work that new toolbox. But one of the significant things that stood out for me, and we're going to talk about that, is alone time. That ironically, I have 2 kids, a wife, and I actually have in-laws that live with me as well. And so with the stay-at-home orders, it actually feels harder to get that alone time and connecting with myself. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that that has come up for me during this time is, so how do I create that? How do I set the boundaries and create that opportunity for that connection with self?
Yeah, I'm noticing that too, and I'm so glad you highlighted it. You would think if you're kind of stuck at home for a while, it'd be like, oh, lots of alone time. But when you're stuck at home with other people, there's not a lot of space from that, and that can be unexpectedly tiring and demanding. So I'm really glad you mentioned that. And there's lots of comments in here. Colleen mentioned she's noticed that she has to exercise every day. Sinclair is sharing about needing to really use those digital connections to stay connected to friends and family. Let's see. Denise is mentioning that she's experiencing sadness and separation and some fear. Yeah, absolutely. There's like 70 responses. These are amazing. I'm not going to highlight all of them, but just because I didn't share yours doesn't mean it's not valuable and important, and we really appreciate you sharing. So I'm going to let you all scroll through and see the things that jump out for you as we continue forward. So, we're all discovering a lot about our wellness and what we need to stay well in these different circumstances. And so that was what brought about the realization that we really need to provide some resources from people. These really are unprecedented times. Many of us have wellness tools that we use to maintain our wellness and to maintain our health that are simply not available right now because of this distancing and because of shifts in the way that a lot of our systems are operating. And so we need some different resources and we need some tools. So my company, AHP, which purchased WRAP from Mary Ellen Copeland in 2016 and has been running the whole books division and all that good stuff, partnered with Matthew's team and the Copeland Center, which is the nonprofit organization that's responsible for training and certification. And we came together and we created this free digital booklet called The Wellness Guide to Overcoming Isolation During COVID-19. And the subtitle is Being Connected, Staying Connected, and Choosing Connection. So this is the tool that is not it's not WRAP, but it goes along with WRAP. It's based on WRAP principles, and it helps you look at what you're already doing for your wellness or what you might like to be doing for your wellness, specifically as relates to connection. And Matthew's going to walk you through it in some detail, but just the big picture is that it's full of prompts that can help you explore and think about what connection looks like for you and what you'd like it to look like for you. It helps you identify for yourself what are some strategies that you can use to feel connected. And my favorite part about it is that it includes a ton of quotes from other people in the WRAP community about what connection and connectedness means to them. And so I have found that particularly inspiring. And this is available as a free digital download. We'll grab that link for you and make sure you have it. But if you are like really excited right now and you want to download it immediately, you can get it at wrapandrecoverybooks.com. So I'm going to turn it over to Matthew, and he is going to walk us through this a little bit more. Matthew, take it away. And while you do that, I'm going to type the Wrap and Recovery Books link into the chat.
Great. Thanks, Kristen. Always a pleasure to work with you. And so tell you a little bit about the design of the guide, the intentions. As you could see, as Kristen mentioned, the subtitle, Being Connected, Staying Connected, and Choosing Connection. I was really excited when, AHP and our regular communications together said we really want to develop something because we recognize, as Kristen went over, the isolation increasing, kind of exasperating the culturally isolation in our country with COVID, and wanted to do something in response to that. And, for one, as Kristen said, at the Copeland Center, we have been a network of peers that were really founded on the initial leadership of Mary Ellen Copeland, of people with lived experience that were seeking to find ways to take power back in our lives for our own wellness. I mean, that's the foundation of it. And WRAP came out of those efforts. Like, what can we do collectively together for ourselves? And that's what we focused on as a peer-run nonprofit organization, is those practices in which use simple, practical strategies. So that was what we wanted to focus on here was, what is it we want to move towards, not away from? And that is, we want to move towards being connected, staying connected, and choosing connection. We also took this as, it's really important right now, but we also wanted to design this with the end in mind. And that is that beyond this pandemic, this topic of connection is really important. And we want this to be a useful tool beyond the pandemic as well. And so it's designed to support you to be well, to be as well as possible, despite the barriers you might face to connection. It's designed to have practical information and exercise, really based on as much of our own lived experience with how do we stay connected, how do we get connected, and really the idea of choosing connection is something we all recognized was a choice. And once we recognize the value of it, I have to say it's really important for me, because I've been saying for a long time, when I break down in non-pathological terms, I heard someone say non-pathological in the chat box, and we can't be more in support of that idea of speaking a language that is simple, plain, and breaks it down into every person, anybody's experience. And when it came to my journey, when I break it down and I look at the difference in my recovery, and I look at the difference when my recovery wasn't there for me, it was isolation as the killer. It's what over time, losing the connections with my friends, and then losing the connections with my family, and finding myself in a very alienated state, that then produced a lot of what my treatment supports, had terms for. But the solution was vastly that I was surrounded by lots of supports that really, despite myself, really didn't allow for me to have full disconnection. I think one of the other pieces to our conversation about the development of this was that disconnection is sometimes a wellness tool too. It's something sometimes we do to be safe. And sometimes we start off there is going a little too far with the disconnection, because of the pain and the struggle that we might be feeling or the trauma we might experience. And that's where the path begins to finding ways to connect again and connect differently than maybe how we had been before. So this is really designed for supporting ourselves to stay in that place of choosing connection, being connected. The guide has lots of stories that we've collected from others as we develop this as peers. So, AHP really valued the perspective that we come from and are able to kind of provide around our lived experiences as peers working together over many years. And, we really draw upon the way we use language and the way we work in this. We draw upon the values and ethics that we're going to talk about. And those that have learned the values and ethics and learned to be well and stay well through applying RAP in their own lives, as we call RAP facilitators around the world. So both AHP and the Copeland Center share in one essential mission, which is that we want to help organizations and individuals reach their full potential. And we focus on those strengths. So just an overview of what this guide was really about. We're going to talk at the end here a little bit about some next steps, because we'd really like to see it go further and further. So next slide is really an opportunity to talk about being connected in wellness, right? So the main thing I think is important is that we really focus on peer support. Is really kind of the essential and ideal form of connection that we can have with two or more people in our lives. And it's really core to facilitating connections for others, right? Is that we're modeling, we're utilizing the dynamic of peer support. And so we also really design this in a way where the guide kind of presents from the perspective as us as peers in wanting to stay connected. And we developed it, again, through a lot of peer sessions, online, in person, discussing this subject together and what it means to us. And you'll see some of the prompts that we're going to do some teasers at here are really designed to invite anyone into that process, to continue the process where this began. Again, for us at the Copeland Center, peer support it's based on mutual respect, mutual support, and connection. It's not based on we're peers because society gave us this similar label or labeled our experiences similar. We have to do the work, and regardless of what those labels might be, again, going back to people saying about a non-pathological approach, this is a non-pathological view of peer support, is that we have to do that work of finding mutual respect, mutual support, and connection. That's what makes us a peer. And we would really say that take the guide, utilize the guide with people in a peer support relationship, right? And it was really through over 2 decades of organizing and peers working together in that way that I would say resulted in what our contributions were to this guide. So with that being said, it's really coming from a place that we all experience times of isolation and loneliness. And in these times, there are ways to connect with others and ourselves. And that's the focus, is what are those ways? And sharing them. There's no set tips for it. The tip is to talk with each other about it. How are you finding ways? And let's focus on it, right? There are many things that we can do, and that's a core message that we always want to send. There are actions that we can take on our own behalf to create these positive changes for ourselves. I wanted to really not overlook that we are in a time where we're not just working with the pandemic. When we developed this, we were not at a time where the current state of racial tension and crisis was surfaced like it is right now. However, this is as equally important to that subject. And for me, that means how am I being connected and being well with diverse, in particular, Black Americans in my country, Black community members. And for me, I'm now saying, this idea of getting staying, being connected, and choosing connection is really relevant to that as well. So if we can, next slide. So being connected and wellness is one and one for us. Staying connected, right? Part of this is also meant to support us as a guide for self-exploration around being connected, staying connected, and choosing connection, even during difficult times, right? And sometimes that is, the idea of it is to engage us in some self-reflection and sharing with each other. And like I said, for me, it's really taking a look at what are my connections in my community right now that can support all of the issues that we're faced with, right? And in particular, what efforts and actions can I take? I can connect better and more well with the Black members of my community. And I think it's just important to say that. And it's something that structurally I have to work at. Anyone may use and benefit from this guide who chooses it, right? And I think it's just really important to be clear about that. It's not presented in a way that it was intended for this group or that group. It is intended for all people. And the more diversity in thought and background of the people coming together to use this guide, the more powerful it's going to be. If we're bringing only a certain select group of people together to use this guide, then we've already created a disconnection. Identify a peer supporter, meaning, as I defined earlier, that person whom you share mutual respect, mutual support, and a connection with. If they already have the guide, or if you can say, hey, I'd like to see what you think about this guide and talk about it over coffee, maybe Zoom and coffee right now, and then just share and explore it. It's meant to be a guide that is interactive as well. Next slide. So there are 7 sections in this guide. And again, we went back and forth and, we found one of the topics here we found is a core topic to what we've done in RAP for many, many years. And that is enjoying alone time. You can find this in some of Mary Ellen's other literature, actually, where I think Winning Against Relapse was a book she wrote. And this has been an important topic that really outside of this community and peer community, not too many people talk about, and it was really important. So when we talk about connection, as with wellness, we mean to say what that is what you decide that is for you, right? Self-determined definitions of these things. And it's important that we explore and think about and learn from each other what the differing views are on connections, even in itself. Exploring, again, alone time. And sometimes some of us have not really been exposed to the idea that alone time is something we can choose. It's something we can enjoy. It's not the result of, being alienated by others. Sometimes it might be, but there's great power in recognizing that when you're not included, you can still connect and enjoy yourself. So, which is the next subject in the guide. It's just connecting with myself. And then connection tools, right? Planning and developing resources in our own lives that are individualized. Creating daily routines that support our sense of connection. And then creating structure, broader structures. We probably won't get into all of these little sections, but as I hope that you will see today, kind of a teaser that how all these subjects can create wonderful learning in a peer environment, right? And then lastly, supporter qualities. I've mentioned one time to a family relative the idea of support, and she said, well, what if your supporters aren't really helpful? And I realized that she was defining supporters as people who were in her life, friends and family, not necessarily defining supporters as those individuals that actually support you. So if that makes sense, sometimes the people who are in your life doesn't make them a supporter just because they're in your life. Just because someone's a family member doesn't make them a supporter. And a lot of times, we haven't taken the time to actually look at what are the qualities of supporters, what are the things they do to support us. And maybe they some of those friends and family members can be better supporters once we define and share what that is that works for us. So that's another important part of this, this guide. So next slide. And Kristen, I'm getting tired, as I said. I said at one point I'm just going to get tired of hearing myself talk, and I'm going to turn it over to you. So if you wouldn't mind taking this next section for me, give me a little break to drink my coffee here.
Absolutely. Thank you. You know, Matthew, before I go on to the slide, I love what you just said about just because someone is in your life doesn't mean that they're a supporter. We get to choose who our supporters are, and we get to choose what those relationships look like, because if someone's there and they're not terribly supportive, we don't have to include them in our list of supporters, either literally or just, you know, in our heads. So something to think about. So what is connection? Well, we're all going to define connection for ourselves, but for the purposes of this conversation, when we're talking about connection, we're talking about the link that we have between ourselves and the outside world. And so that can be a connection with another person. It can be a connection with a place. It can be a connection with an idea that we identify with and that we take on as our own. And connection can be about the relationship that we have with ourselves. And I'll say for me personally, I enjoy a lot of alone time. I get very overwhelmed by too much interaction with other people. And I thought, oh my gosh, lockdown life is going to be awesome because I won't have to go anywhere. And to some extent that, that was true. It took a lot of pressure off of me. But I realized that now that I had a lot of alone time, more than I was used to, I had to really learn who I am again in relation to myself, not just what my role is in relation to other people. And so that's been a really interesting learning experience for me. So we'd love to hear, what does connection mean to you? So go ahead and type in the chat box and tell us, what is your definition of connection? What does connection mean to you? And I'll be quiet for a moment so you can type.
Kristen, I'll help out here. I see, because it pushes it forward, right? So one is being my authentic self with someone or in some place.
Yeah. And seeing, giving and receiving support, and also being part of a whole, being part of something bigger that's just outside of myself.
Connection means unity and togetherness.
Yeah, that one jumped out at me. And then I also love, a connection to me is an exchange of energy. That really, I connect with that. I like that idea. Yes. Ooh, connection is trust, easiness of being together, mutual understanding and listening and caring when together.
Yeah, being a part of community or a purpose in a meaningful way. One of the projects we also work on is community inclusion with the Collaborative on Community Inclusion at Temple. And one of the things that we, one of the things that's important to note is that now the mainstream part of the world is understanding something that many of us in the peer movement have known for a long time, which is when you're told to not participate in your community, doesn't feel good, doesn't help your mental health. And in many regards, in the past, people have been told, don't work, don't be meaningful parts of the community, get your treatment down, work on your treatment. And what we've been trying to say is that, participation in our community is a medical necessity. And I think people are, everyone's experiencing that now, like, oh, and it has to do with this idea of connection being a meaningful part of community. And many of us are figuring that out now. We can't participate in the community like we used to, but our drive to still be a part of the community is there. And that's been true for us in mental health for a long time, that maybe the ways that we used to connect with community have changed because of what's going on in our life, because of the crisis or trauma we're having in our life. But the answer is to not be removed from connecting with the community. The answer is to find those new tools to stay connected with the community. That is our recovery. That is our treatment, our wellness, right? So I just want to take that opportunity to underscore that, and again, why we feel that this is the topic to focus on right now.
Yeah, that's so true. And I mean, our life doesn't happen in a vacuum. Our life happens in relationship to all of the things that are going on around us and all of the people that we interact with in different ways. So it's not like I just, live in a Kristen bubble, right? Like so when we're sort of forced out of those spaces of connection, either literally or figuratively, that's really hard. It does not feel good. And so one of the things that the connection book does, and thank you guys for all of these great comments. I'm sorry we don't have time to read all of them because they're really fantastic. And I'm going to ask Ruth if we can get a copy of this chat. That would be amazing because I'd love to be able to go back and like read through this in more detail.
Yeah, we'll absolutely send you a copy of that.
Oh, thank you. That's awesome. So, some of us are connecting for the first time. Some of us are reconnecting, and some of us are doing both of those things at the same time. So Matthew, I have a couple thoughts on this and I'll throw it back to you if you feel ready. But I'm learning how to connect with people in a different way because of physical distancing. Like, for example, one of the things that I'm accustomed to is that when I see a friend, the first thing I do is hug them. And, most of my friends are big huggers. And so we're looking at ways like, how do we connect and have that sense of closeness and that sense of affection without touching each other and even without being less than 6 feet apart? So that's a way to kind of reconnect. But I'm also learning how to connect with myself in a different way. Like, what do I really need to feel connected and bonded to other people? What do I need to feel heard? What do I need to feel comfortable when I'm alone? What's really important to me? So I think we can be making new connections, making reconnections, and then sort of discovering these pieces within ourselves all at the same time. Matthew, what else would you say about this?
Maybe something that hasn't quite been said yet, but is definitely an important part of this guide and the conversation, which is that for some of us, sometimes being social is not the same thing as making connections. So there are lots of things that we can do that are not necessarily social in terms of how we typically think about it. So, for example, reading a book or the other day I was so wrapped up in my heads about things that I didn't really feel very connected to my actual life and myself. I went out and I just started weeding and gardening, and it just freed up my thinking so that I could really get literally grounded in the present moment. And that's also an important aspect for me and also for others. I mean, when we did this book, we talked a lot about that. Like, connection is not just always, conversing and doing stuff with people. Sometimes it's connecting with the world around us, nature. And so, and sometimes those are the things, like to know that I can go to a park and people watch, or a mall and feel a sense of connection and activity, but not necessarily have to have social interactions, can be very freeing when you're, not feeling like you want to have a lot of social interaction, but it's still important. And there are still things we can do to be connected.
Yeah, I'm noticing that Bridget made a great comment in the chat. I'm not sure everybody can see it, so I'm going to read it out loud. She says, when you have less of a physical connection with others, it challenges you and those with whom you connect to express more of what's going on in your life and your thoughts and feelings. And I totally agree. I think that I'm learning through this physical distance that sometimes I have thought of physical connection or like physical proximity or nearness as being a substitute for connection, but it actually isn't. And as I'm realizing that more for myself, it explains to me more why, like, I don't know about you guys, but like parties are like my worst nightmare. I hate parties. There's so many people and it's really overwhelming. And I feel so alone in that setting. And I've always thought to myself, like, well, what is wrong with me? Like, why do I feel so alone when I'm surrounded by all those people? And the truth is, physical nearness is not the same thing as connection. And so this is an opportunity for us to look at, like, what really is connection and what do we want to do to move toward that? So another chat opportunity here. What are some steps that you might take to connect with others or yourself, or to reconnect? What might that look like? Go ahead and type in the chat. We'd love to hear. You guys have just such great ideas, and I really appreciate the generosity with which you are sharing them. It is really nice. Oh, there's a comment here from Tiffany that I think we need to highlight. She's saying, I believe the protests are also driven by our need to connect in the community and show humanity is needed, even during a pandemic. Tiffany, that is a great point, because it's not just about the physical nearness, but to be connecting with others around a shared set of ideas and responsibilities and rights and values and all those other pieces, and be able to express that is a really important example of connection. Thank you for highlighting that.
I saw here, I can relate to this, plugging off of social media. That's how I connect back with myself. And I can relate to that, like taking those breaks and vacations from that whole world, which is kind of like its own world. Write an actual letter. That is a great idea. I like that.
Yes.
And faith and spirituality, I think what it reminds me of when we were developing this guide, I was realizing that as people were defining connections and steps they take to reconnect, that we were like hitting on the domains of community inclusion. We were hitting on all the dimensions of wellness, not by prescribing them, but by this broad topic. And that's when I know we're talking about the right thing, is when it connects to so many other important conversations we've had as well.
I'm noticing some patterns here that I'm really liking in these responses, because it's showing me that we're all kind of coalescing around certain ideas. There's lots of people talking about actually writing and mailing physical letters or physical gifts. There are people talking about doing outreach to folks in your past, and several people mentioning using like live or recorded video chats to connect. But there's something else here that's pretty neat. Multiple people are talking about connecting with strangers. And when you have those interactions, sharing a word and sharing some acknowledgement and humanity with them. Lots of themes here in these responses. Let's see what else.
Walks to connect, meditation, utilizing apps for meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting by the ocean, that is, as you can see the picture behind me, that's a big one for me. Sometimes after, doing intensive day-long trainings, when I've had the opportunity to do that by the ocean, I just need to decompress and connect with the ocean and myself, and just sometimes not hear the chatter of all the conversations I had all day in my head. And so I really connect with that idea.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of comments too about reconnecting with nature, whether it's, in the woods or by water, on the beach, that sort of thing, digging in the dirt like you shared, Matthew. Yeah, lots here. Oh gosh, this is great, you guys. Thank you for sharing that. Matthew, you want to talk about alone time?
Yeah, so again, this is a really big thing for me. I'd say it's one of those, as they say sometimes, talk about turning points, but really taking back power and redefining healthy ways to connect with myself when I'm alone, and overcoming the difference between loneliness and being alone. So for me, I think a huge part of my wellness and my journey was really redefining this for myself, and really taking power back to say that there are lots of things I can do. I could be in relationship with myself. And as you can see, this picture here is actually a pic that's me. I took that picture, and then there was, I wish I could give her credit right now, but I had utilized this technology. It was an app that was specifically designed for people struggling with different health conditions. And it was, the idea of it was to engage in utilizing taking photos and then altering the photos with these different filters to express your feelings. And so photography, I guess, is where I'm headed. Like, photography was one way that I really learned to kind of be in harmony and be alone, to spend that time myself. I didn't have to depend on anybody else. I could take a camera with me. Of course, at the time, we didn't have digital phones. I actually had like developed my film and everything, but now having these apps and being able to share that right on, Instagram, or talk to my friends or share the photo with my friends, but to express yourself, and, kind of utilizing art too. So, the main thing is to really take a look at and explore how we can take power back in our lives to be alone. And that it's a way that we can kind of connect. For me, it's also a time to really learn from all those interactions that I've had in my life, and then kind of choose where I want to go with that, rather than kind of just constantly living a life of reacting and reacting and reacting, and sometimes inheriting things from those relationships, rather than reflecting and selecting what is coming into my life and choosing a path forward. And alone time is a great time to do that, whether it's journaling or art. And so, with that, I think we want to invite you to think about this and as well, and share. I'm learning a lot from the chats, from what people are putting in there. I'm feeling connecting just when people say things that I validate with me. So it'd be great if we could take a moment to share. How do you like to enjoy alone time? How do you take power back to enjoy that time alone? And with that, I'll start with Kristen, if you could share too.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I want to echo what you just said about just seeing the ideas that people are sharing in the chat. It's so validating. I'm like, yes, it's not just me. I am learning how to enjoy alone time. There was a period in my life where I really avoided it. And I noticed that I've created some habits with that I don't like. And so one of those habits is when I get alone time, sometimes I'll get really uncomfortable because I'm like, oh God, I'm alone with my thoughts. What if they're no good? And so I'll like hide in like scrolling Facebook or something, which doesn't help. So what I'm trying out right now for my alone time is lots of reading and lots of journaling, and like reading like actual physical books that I can hold in my hand, and I'm not plugged in anywhere. And I'm really noticing like, oh my gosh, my thoughts are okay. I can actually be alone with myself. I don't have to hide and distract myself by these other things. I can just enjoy. And I'm also starting to learn how to just sit quietly. And like some people might think of it as meditation. I just think of it as time to just like take a breath and take a break. So those are like my big things right now, is reading, journaling, and just like sitting and doing nothing and just seeing what comes up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So a lot of what you just said actually captured a lot, came up in the chat box. Watching classic films, reading books, Pilates, yoga, nature, water, and music, taking walks, traveling. And what one idea came up in these discussions was the idea of being a tourist in your own hometown. That feeling when you walk off into a new town, you're like, oh, look at how people are here, how they dress. And sometimes, one fun activity of connecting was to like kind of go into your own like local town and come at it from a viewpoint of like, new eyes. Like if you were a tourist and just a robe in your own town or neighborhood, what impressions would they make? Watch old cartoons like Bugs Bunny. That is definitely, I can relate to that. I do that with my kids, actually. It's kind of cool to see them appreciating this just as much as I did when I was younger. Completing puzzles while listening to music. I've been doing that recently. I discovered that, I think, because of this pandemic and more time on the weekends, and listening to music and puzzles, but also podcasts and puzzles has been a new thing for me. Thank you for sharing that. Working out, gardening. Wow, this is just an amazing list. Being grateful, taking time to take a gratitude list. I've heard people talk about. My spirituality is on a new level. Meditation, prayer, reading the Bible, self-reflection, reach out to others through affirmation, listening to inspirational music. All amazing stuff. Well, we have just about 10 minutes left, Kristen, I think. It's an hour webinar, right? And I'd like to talk just a little bit about some of our thoughts about how this guy could be used, but certainly, use it widely, use it. But I'd say first and foremost, use it for yourself and then share it with others. And as I said earlier, it's really designed and intended and we think really effective, just like we're doing here, from a peer perspective, right? People working together. We have extra a little bit more time than that. So we have plenty of time for Q&A. Great. So yeah, the main thing is, download it, take it, look at it, talk to friends about it, think about your own stories and illustrations, and then, invite others into the conversation. But invite others into the conversation less from the perspective of, here's what I think you could benefit from, but more from the perspective of, I'd like to get some more ideas for myself. I'm curious to how this might apply to you and what you're doing. Is a very different orientation than, here, let me tell you what you should do, or let me give you some ideas of things you could do. No shoulda, coulda, wouldas, or Ewing. The best way to use the guide is use it for yourself. Be curious to find people who want to be a peer in exploring these topics too. Very much like you all graciously participated in with us. But this can be something I think is a useful tool for the workplace. I know as a Copeland Center, the team we have, we prioritize anytime we connect with each other on a project or as a team. We use these questions to check in with each other, and we talk about it explicitly together as a workforce, as a team. It absolutely complements RAP. As you could take a look in the chat box, if you're familiar with RAP, you could see we just, did a lot of wellness tools and action plans that people come up, and that is by design intentional. And we also want to build off of our strengths, and our strengths are that we have trained and oriented practitioners, people who use RAP in their lives and then learn the values and ethics of how to facilitate that with others from a peer perspective. And we've done that in the tens of thousands. And so we really would like to see our RAP co-facilitators who are already familiar with those practices to utilize this guide as a resource, particularly right now, but also it lends itself well to online formats like we're just doing right now. If you follow the full guide, you would probably find that you could do many, many sessions over a period of time, bringing people together and reflecting on these the dialogues that we're having. And with smaller groups, we're close to, we're over 400. So ideally, we'd be a smaller group. We'd all be unmuted and we'd be having extensive dialogues, just like a whole session on how we spend alone time could be one session. And friends, family, talk to friends and family with it, share it with them. If you are in a professional provider role, please share the guide, share the resource, share it in the way to say, hey, this is something I found helpful. It was developed by people who've been working on their own recovery and wellness for a long time. If you want to talk more about it, it's something I would love to talk to you more about. Love to take a look at how we're supporting you in what comes up for you in this. If you're working on this and you're identifying things that work well for you to be connected and stay connected, and maybe that can inform some of the goals we've put in here in your treatment plan. It's a great opportunity to really highlight from that conversation things that maybe we've overlooked that are working for people. For example, you never know, somebody who hasn't been working for a long time, people have been telling them work is not something they should think about right now. They take a look at this guide and they really talk about how their best connections were when they were doing meaningful work. That's one way I could see that this could be a catalyst to the treatment provider role, as an example. May also learn that too, and when a person chooses to share what they've done and gotten out of this guide, we might find out that there are important things that they come up for that person that when they're in crisis, are new priorities for us we didn't know. So just a few ways in which I think this could benefit that as well, even though the primary intention is really a self-guide that people can use with a peer. And so next slide is, oh yeah, Kristen, I always love hearing you talk about the values and ethics of RAP. And, you know, again, this is kind of why we think that it would be wonderful to start with a lot of the co-facilitators, RAP co-facilitators out there to use this guide, because this is part of the facilitator training is extensive training around how do we practice these values and ethics.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, you know, this connection guide is not RAP, but it's rooted in RAP, and it's something that you can use on its own or to supplement your own plans that make up your RAP. And so here are the key points that are so important to remember when we're working with this guide, when we're working with RAP, and just when we're supporting ourselves and other people. Everyone is the expert on themselves, and we all have multiple paths to wellness. And so, you know, we shared a definition of connection today, just so we had, you know, a shared understanding of what we're talking about in the next hour. But you can have your own definition of connection and what that looks like for you and how you support yourself to do it. And RAP and connection are based on self-determination and voluntary participation. You get to decide who you're connected with and at what level. You get to decide who your supporters are, and you get to decide what those interactions and those connections look like. That's not for other people to decide for you. This is also rooted in the belief in equality. Like, there is no one who's better, worse. Like, we all are equal. We all experience and share with each other unconditional high regard. And there's no power differential here. We all have the same right and ability to determine what connection looks like for us, what wellness looks like for us, and how we achieve both of those things. This is all about mutual learning. That's why this conversation was not just Matthew and me talking at you, but, you know, asking you questions and getting your feedback. And as Matthew said, you know, in an ideal setting, we would really dig into this in small groups so we could have that real in-depth, you know, super personal conversation. This is a great other option because we've been able to really share and learn with each other using the chat, which makes it feel really connected, even though it's a big group. But it really is about mutual learning. There's not just like one right way to do this. And we all have the opportunity to learn from others and also to share with others. And this goes along with any lifestyle therapy program tool that you use. So you don't have to pick RAP or, you don't have to pick connection or, you can have an and. And so I stand in the and because I want you to have all of these things. It goes along with whatever you want. And that's what RAP is about. And there's no specific philosophy or model that you have to subscribe to. You don't have to, you know, believe anything other than that you get to define your own wellness, and so do other people. I mean, if you had to pick the core philosophy of RAP, that's it. But that's it. That's as far as it goes. So you get to decide what that looks like for you. And we're really focused on strengths and possibilities and potential. As Matthew said, AHP, we're literally called Advocates for Human Potential. That's what we do. And the Copeland Center stands for the potential for wellness and recovery for everyone. So this whole program is about helping you achieve whatever wellness looks like for you, whatever connection looks like for you, and supporting you to build on your strengths. There's nothing wrong here. So there's nothing that you need to diagnose, fix, repair, cover up. This is just an opportunity for you to identify what works for you and then to build on that until you get to where you want to be. And where you want to be can change over time. And so both RAP and this connection booklet are super flexible, and they're designed to grow with you the way that you want them to, when you want them to. So, oh, my slides are stuck. Hang on. So we are curious to know which of these values is most important to you. What really stands out? I'm going to actually back up the slide so you can see if I can figure out how. Hang on. There we go. So
I put the question in the chat too, so.
Yeah. So go ahead and type in the chat, which is the one that really stands out to you there. And you can pick more than one, that's fine. What is the one that's most important? Matthew, what's your most important value today? What's the one that resonates with you in this moment?
I want to say mutual learning model, because, you know, going into this, you and I, we kind of came together to put this together. But I think for me, it's always like we're talking about connection and how do we do it in a way where everyone feels connection. So I'm feeling like we did a good job at actually practicing this. That to me is the ethic,
Mm-hmm.
because of the way we work together with the slides. And you know, it's easy sometimes in this work to just kind of jump in and do stuff, and then the values and ethics get lost. But for me, I would say that's really standing out as important. Like, yes, I think we're doing that as best as we can, given the tools that we have, you know. And I see that other people are saying that that's important to them too. So
Yeah, I agree. It seems like if we were polling right now, which we're not exactly, I think the top choices would probably be that mutual learning, and then also the idea that we're experts on ourselves. And all of these have value, and which ones stand out to us are going to change from day to day depending on what we need at that moment and kind of where we are on that day. The one that stands out to me today is multiple paths to wellness. And I'm so grateful for all the sharing that has happened in the chat, because I am seeing what some of those additional paths could be for me and also what they are for other people. So I'm really enjoying this conversation.
yeah, and someone shared something that was actually on my mind too, which is like also given the current circumstances, with you know, between the racial wounds that need to be addressed in this country. They mentioned focusing on equality, and reflection on my skills in valuing and promoting equality always. So I have to say that, yeah, that is a really important thing. And I'm really glad that I'm a part of a community, a work, an organization where that is an explicit value of ours.
Absolutely. Thank you all for sharing. We're going to start moving toward Q&A, but we have just a couple more resources for you. Matthew, do you want to walk us through some next steps where people can go from here after this conversation?
Yeah, so we wanted to get this information and this guide out quickly, and as it is timely. At the same time, we always do like to be strategic and long range in things. And so, and one of the things that we are currently working on is how do we expand this beyond COVID-19? Because we think this is, and I think you've all just really validated for us that this goes beyond COVID-19. Again, that's what was happening at the time, but as we talked about with the current opportunity to change things in this country around the racial divide, that I think there are additional benefits to looking at this in that regard too. We are and have been looking towards developing a facilitation guide. So a lot of the kind of the tips and the structures that Kristen and I are using here for a very brief intro can support people to do a more expanded exploration of this in a peer facilitated fashion. We want this to complement RAP peer support groups. This can be an extension. RAP is, we know that there are certain session structures and curriculums and way of facilitating that are evidence-based, but the idea of RAP and where that comes from is that this becomes a living practice of action planning every day in our lives. And beyond that initial start we know is evidence-based, we really want to work towards co-facilitators supporting people beyond that foundation to keep coming back. Like right now, for example, my whole RAP plan has been retooled because things have changed a lot. And I get the support of my community where we're all talking about how we're adjusting our RAP plans. So this guide is also what we call a recovery or a wellness topic, which has always been a part of RAP, that there are expanded topics that we explore. A RAP co-facilitator online training. So like right now, we want to be able to offer with that guide a training for RAP co-facilitators to online to learn how to do this online, be supported to do it online. We want to be able to focus on peer specialists doing this as well, that are RAP co-facilitators. We also want to encourage people, as we've been throughout this whole session, to foster grassroots peer support one-on-one and in groups throughout their community, where people are just coming together, going through the guide together, supporting each other around this. We want providers to share this guide broadly and widely, and also consider how does this apply to our workforce and our team self-care. right now, everyone working within the healthcare and all different healthcare issues, it's pretty well documented. There've already been a study done in China that showed that the trauma and the impacts of this pandemic on their direct healthcare workers. We can no longer neglect the needs for self-care and connection and peer support among our healthcare workers. WRAP booklets like this are not just for the people we serve as healthcare providers, but it's for ourselves. It's that oxygen mask, you know, and we hope organizations and institutions and systems create the budgets, the time, the space, the resource for our providers to get the support they need. At the same time, I know that the demands are high for us to work, and serve. But how well will we be if we're all burned out and not taking the time for the training and the self-care and connection that we need, the team retreats, etc. So that's something I hope to continue to advocate for, is support our supporters.
Excellent. Thanks, Matthew. So that's the end of the slides. And we have about like 7-ish minutes left for questions. And I will say, I put a note in the chat box. We have an article on mentalhealthrecovery.com that's specifically about updating your WRAP for the pandemic. And, you know, Matthew and I both mentioned some of the things that are just not available right now. They're parts of our plan. So if you're experiencing that and you want some prompts to help you update your WRAP, I can't grab the link right now because I'm sharing the slides, but if you just go to mentalhealthrecovery.com, it'll either be in the list of recent articles, or you can search for the word pandemic and it'll pop right up. So what questions do we have before we wrap up today? And thank you for the thank yous in the chat. I'm glad this was a good experience for folks. It's hard to tell if folks are typing or if there are no questions. So I'm going to suggest that we pause and create space for those questions to come in. Matthew, is that okay with you?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I'm just sharing in the chat box. Just the Copeland Center's website. We do offer, we do have a membership community, and through the membership community, we do offer lots of sessions similar to this, webinars that include, you know, opportunities for people. Like, we have one new membership thing that developed from the community, which was a wellness writers group. It's people that get together on Zoom and they talk about various different ways in which writing is a big part of their wellness, and they share ideas, and they're actually working on, I think, on collaborative writing projects together. But we, you know, as far as connection, we offer some sessions that are just simply inviting people who are dedicated to the wellness to get together and talk about wellness tools right now during the pandemic. And we have also, beyond the membership, offering to our advanced level and WRAP facilitators connection sessions where we check in with each other and how people are, you know, for all of us as facilitators, the first foundation of being a good facilitator is keeping our own WRAPs well and being well. So we've created these group online experiences where if you fall into that category, please keep an eye out for those opportunities. We're just coming together and looking at what does our WRAP look like today, you know, with everything going on. So I want to thank NIAPRS and Harvey. I had to say, I have early on in my career, one of the shiny beacons on the hill of working in this field was Harvey's leadership and the NIAPRS conference that I've been to. They always put together spectacular, talk about connections. Harvey's always done a great job, in my impression, of getting people connected, the leaders based on the values of wellness and recovery. So I want to thank NIAPRS for this invitation and opportunity. And, you know, Harvey, you're a mentor to me. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Maz. Very kind, but you are you are that leader, and there's so much, a whole generation of people. I don't want to sound old, but there's a whole generation of people that are really leading the way, and I'm just so grateful for that and for all your work. But I really want to thank the two of you, your organizations. I was really, wasn't sure. And I learned that you two are working so closely together and created this and are offering this wonderful free resource at just the right time. So, I go back with both of you, your organizations, a long time, and want to thank you both, especially the generosity of doing it for free. That really is very, very special. I think some people will never forget that at this time you created this and offered it to people. I'll always be grateful for it. So, well, I guess we're just about out of time. Am I right, Ruth? Are we on the end?
Yeah, we've got a little bit of time left, and I do want to take this opportunity just to let everyone know that we are indeed offering CEUs for this webinar today, and that's 1.25 CEUs. So we already have your attendance just by you being here with us today, and so the next step is for you to complete our evaluation, and you should be getting that by email. And it's a link, and it's all electronic. You fill that out, you send it back. That in turn closes the link. We have your attendance, we have your evaluation, and then please give us around 30 days to send you your actual certificate. Back to you, Harvey.
I just want to say that we have a couple of webinars coming up in July. One of them is with Patrick Henry on loneliness and isolation and the antidote to that. But one of them is a new one that we just closed on Joseph Rogers and Sally Zinman and Celia Brown on history of the movement. And I think that'll be very special. So, stay in touch with us. Look for our announcements through the e-news or any other mailing list. Forward the announcements, please. Look to our website. But we really will be, we're going to try to do this as long as we can and just continue to dazzle you with these wonderful speakers like we had today. So thank you so much, the two of you. And I guess we'll see you next week with Ruth and her cronies, as I call them.
Thank you, Harvey. Thank you, Kristen,
Thank you.
as always. It's always my greatest pleasure to co-facilitate with you.
I agree. I just love you so much. Thank you for being my friend and my partner in this. And Harvey, thank you so much for having us.
Well, I saw people in the chat really commenting on how good you work, well you work together, and so open-hearted. And that's what I got out of this. I had to jump back and forth, but the open-heartedness of this was really, and humility, really beautiful. Okay, well, I'm back to my other webinar, Planning the NIAPRS Conference, which will be virtual this year, and we'll tell you more about it. So.
Looking forward to hearing about that. I never missed the news about that, so yeah.
You're in.
Okay.
You guys can do this kind of presentation then. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Matt, and thank you, Kristen. And I want to thank the over 400 people who joined us today. Have a wonderful afternoon. And remember, if you need to watch this again, and I would, 2 or 3 times, it's going to be posted on our website within 24 hours. Take care, all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.